Hello, everyone, and welcome to the continuing series of our virtual speaker luncheons. I'm Judy Kleinberg, co-president with Nancy Shepard of the League of Women Voters of Palo Alto. And as you know, the League of Women Voters envisions a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate in our electoral process. The League is a nonpartisan political organization. We encourage informed and active participation of citizens in government through education, and we endorse initiatives, but never a political party or a candidate for office. We're a membership-based organization, and we invite everyone over the age of 16 to be a member, whether they're a citizen or not. We're gender neutral, and you can, if you're not a member already or you know someone who's interested, please go to our website, lwvpaloalto.org. So with that out of the way, we are especially delighted and honored that our speaker today is Palo Alto Chief of Police Andrew Binder. For those that didn't read the PR before this started, let me review that Andrew is a Bay Area native and a 25-year law enforcement veteran currently serving as our police chief in Palo Alto. He holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice administration from San Jose State and a master's degree in criminal justice from Arizona State. He graduated from the FBI National Academy for Law Enforcement Managers and has also completed the executive development course from the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training. Well educated, just like everyone in Palo Alto. Andrew spent his first 18 years with the San Jose Police Department, working a wide range of assignments, including narcotics, field training, academy training, research and development, internal affairs, homicide, and police academy supervisor. In 2015, he joined the Palo Alto Police Department, where he continued his leadership development through a variety of management and executive leadership roles, overseeing both divisions within the department. And then in June of 2020, Palo Alto launched the city's Race and Equity Framework and Action Plan, and Andrew was designated as the police department's representative as part of a comprehensive effort to advance the city's race and equity initiatives. So, as this is a webinar, you will be muted, as you were just told, throughout. However, we do welcome all your questions. Please make them brief. Go to the Q&A function in your Zoom webinar picture and write in your questions, and we will be reviewing them throughout the presentation. And at the end of Chief Binder's presentation, we will start the Q&A. Please be patient. If your question isn't asked, or it isn't asked exactly the way you posed it, because we don't have that much time. And now it is my real pleasure to introduce Andrew Binder, who will speak to us on how our police department is prioritizing service in Palo Alto. Welcome, Chief Binder.
Thank you, Judy, so much. And what a pleasure to be here. And thank you for that very fine introduction. If I could add one thing, it'd probably be lifelong learner. I think we can all appreciate that. And so just really grateful to be here. I just want to recognize both you, President Kleinberg, and President Shepard, Myra, Luis, and everyone else from the league who made this afternoon possible. I know it was a lot of work behind the scenes. And as a police chief, the opportunity to engage with so many aspects of Palo Alto is always something I really look forward to. So I'm appreciative for this opportunity to meet. I do encourage questions as we go through. I know Judy's going to collect those. We'll get to those at the end. I'm going to give you a ton of information. So as they pop into your mind, please jot those down so Judy can get those and we can do our best to answer you. And much like I say at a police department meeting, if I don't have the answer for you now, I promise I'll look it up and we'll follow up with the league to get you what you need as best we can. So, with that, I did spend my first 18 years in San Jose, but I finally got smart and I came to Palo Alto in 2015. And I got to tell you, it's a real privilege not only to serve the police department, but as of last August, being confirmed by the city council to be the police chief. And, one of the things I like to start these meetings off with is just to reaffirm not only that privilege of providing and being responsible for public safety here in Palo Alto, but how much, I deeply care about the safety, protecting the constitutional rights of all of those who live, who work, and who visit and come to Palo Alto for all this wonderful city has to offer. And I will say that I'm grateful, and I actually really admire the way the league participates in local government and how you influence public safety. So we have a lot in common. Me working for public safety and local government, and so it's just a pleasure to be here. With that said, I do have some slides that I'd like to just kind of talk through. You don't need to take notes. Luis or Myra, if you want to give out this presentation, this slide presentation, you're welcome to share it. And if we could go to the first slide, that would be great.
The slide is up.
Okay, go ahead and transition to the next one. All right. Boy, you sure read a lot about the police department and hear a lot about police agencies nationally, throughout the state, and locally. And we're no different. We're a service providing entity. We work local government, like I just said. We provide public safety service, police service here. And just like any business or entity that provides services, we have our fair share of challenges and opportunities. I will say that as a police chief, I look at challenges as opportunities to grow, to learn. Um, because I manage and lead humans, um, we make mistakes as all humans do. And our goal here from the top down is to always identify those mistakes, own those mistakes, and move forward. And so, um, I'm really proud of the work that we've done. I like to share at community meetings. You'll read about us in our local media. We're more than our headlines. So opportunities like this are really great for you to get to know the police department in a much more personal fashion. So I hope that that happens over the next hour. Tops on my list, when I get up on the morning and I'm chief, what's on my mind? I would say my biggest challenge, one of them, is our recruiting, our hiring, and our retention. And that's at all levels. The officers that wear the uniform, the badge, and the gun, they're the most forward facing of the police department. When you call 911, the likelihood is that you're going to get a uniformed officer. But the police department is so much more. We have our dispatchers when you call in, our record staff if you need stuff, a report. We have a property and evidence techs. Someone's got to keep the radios going and the IT going. And so, in all those areas of the police department, we have holes and we have vacancies. And so, recruiting qualified people, getting those people hired and going through that background, and then making sure that all the money and training and the investment that we put in, that we keep them on the back end. Because what we don't want is this like revolving door of people who come in and we spend a lot of money on them and then they go out and they take their services. And so I have, vacancies at throughout the department. I will say that I'm extremely appreciative of both our current council and prior councils for their support in both building back the police department, and other things that they're doing to make sure that they put me as the chief in a best position to do that. One of my challenges with hiring police officers specifically is that if I was today to say that I would like to hire 5 police officers and I had the vacancies, I had the money, from the time that it would take me to recruit, hire, train, and get that police officer out into a black and white police car serving our community, it's anywhere from 15 to 18 months. It's a really long time. And of that percentage of police officers that we hire, generally anywhere from 18 to 24% don't make it through the entirety of the process, meaning a police academy, which is about 6 months, a field training program, and then a probationary period for a myriad of reasons. And so that's why making sure that we get qualified people in the door, hiring people that are right fit for this police department, right fit to serve this community, is so critical for me. And one of the things that I share is that this is not just a I'm not the only police chief in Palo Alto that wakes up with these thoughts. I will tell you that when I go to regional and statewide meetings and training consortiums and symposiums, that this is on a chief's mind everywhere and even nationally. And what I like to share is that the talent pool is shallow and the competition is fierce. And we're the law enforcement agencies in this region are fighting a lot for the same candidates, same quality qualified candidates. And so there's only so many people that choose from. And you might be asking yourself, well, why is that? Why do people not want to sign up to be a police officer? I think there's a lot of reasons that play into that. One of which is the cost of living in the Bay Area. People are astonished to hear that I have officers who live as far away down as Monterey County, who live in the Central Valley. I have an officer, believe it or not, who lives half time in here and half time in Texas, Austin, Texas. So, and that is not unheard of for law enforcement and public safety. Fire also is because the cost of living is so high, housing, and we're having that is one of the challenges. Um, I will also say that you know the and I'll get into this in a little bit, but the very tragic, unfortunate, and horrific death, murder of George Floyd at the hands of law enforcement in the early summer of 2020 really exposed a lot of issues within the policing profession, and it turned a lot of people off. And while I know that the overwhelming majority of the men and women who put on the uniform to serve, want to do it professionally and with pride and build that trust and respect and integrity. We do have those bad apples out there. And we're definitely seeing, as these conversations nationally, statewide, and locally talked about on police reform, people who were maybe on the fence about getting into this, they may not want to be under the type of scrutiny that law enforcement is under these days. They may not want to see themselves on a video that goes viral and seen by millions. And so people that, um, if their heart really isn't in it for service and they're not in it for the long haul, may look other ways. So we're trying to change that narrative, to set expectations, to expect professionalism, impartiality, to live to our mission, which is to proudly serve and protect with respect and integrity. That starts from the top down. And so, bringing that in for people as so they know what they're getting into and know that we're going to support them. The next bullet point you'll see there is the shifting nature of crime. As a police chief, I'm very lucky. I'll even call it blessed that we have a very low violent crime rate, that overall, Palo Alto is a very safe city to spend your time in. I'm not naive to the fact that we still do have crime and that big things do happen. But when those happen, they're so far and few between that's why you'll read them on the headlines. But I can tell you as a police chief, having looked at stats, and we'll talk about where you can go for that. I will tell you that our violent crime rate is very low, and the number one crime issue that we deal with here is property crimes. And so your burglaries, your auto thefts, your catalytic converter thefts, we have traffic issues. And one of the things I always like to make sure that I make very clear is that well, I can sit up here and say I'm blessed to have a low violent crime rate. It doesn't make being the victim of even a property crime any less important to me. And having had, as a young child, having had my house burglarized, as a young adult, having my car broken into, those are very, they leave quite a lasting mark. And if that's ever happened to you, if you've been a victim of that type of crime, you feel very violated. You and so very invasive. And so I don't want to come across as belittling those things. So all crime is important to us. What we're seeing specifically when I talk about the shifting nature of crime, and this is really on a regional level for the Bay Area, are these organized retail theft crews. organized auto burglary crews, our catalytic converter crews. And so what do I mean? What do I talk about? And you may see this on social media, but what we're seeing here in our organized retail theft crews is literally crews of sometimes one, two, multiple groups. They'll steal a car, they'll steal two cars, they'll hatch a plan. They're very strategic and sophisticated, and they will specifically target some of our bigger retailers. And you may have read about, occurrences that have happened on University, occurrences that have happened at the shopping center, even down in other parts of town. And so, not only is there this mass aggressive move to rush these stores, we're finding that a lot of these crews, they're armed and dangerous. And so when we talk about in a couple slides, when we talk about what can you do to do your part on public safety, I would never advocate for you trying to take these crews on, because it's property. And one of my thoughts is people over property. Property is replaceable, humans aren't. And while it may really stink to get your car broken into, your catalytic theft, your catalytic converter stolen, I would never advocate you confronting these people. That's what law enforcement's for. And I will tell you, we do a really good job. While we don't catch everyone, and some people we won't get in the moment, our detective bureau and our officers are tenacious, and I'm really proud of the way that we follow up on stuff. And we'll talk about our license plate reader technology in just a minute here, and about how that is helping us both in thwarting criminal activity and catching it on the back end. And then last, I kind of hit on this public perception of law enforcement. I'm not aware of any other career or profession at this point that wears a body worn camera for everything that they do. So imagine asking your doctor or your brain surgeon or a heart surgeon to put on a camera, and then we're gonna take that video and we're gonna allow the public to critique um, what they do. But I want to be very clear. Body worn cameras are a really good thing. And what I like to call them is a third party neutral observer of the account of what happened. And 99 out of 100 times when that body camera is reviewed, we find that our officers are either doing the right thing or may need some training or correction. Um, but in the instance that they're not, our officers are not acting appropriately and professionally, we want to know that as a chief. And I can tell you, without going into the details, how critical and valuable that body worn camera has been for us, and to know that that level of accountability is there. And I'm really grateful that we have. So enough about the challenges. Let's talk about opportunities. A much funner topic. Um, we are rebuilding the police department. It started really in the fall of 2020, 2021, as the budget began to bounce back from COVID and some of the fallout of that. And again, I can't thank past and current council, my boss, Ed Shikada, and other city staff who have just been so fantastic in helping us build back this police department. So that's more police officers on the street. That's more records technicians in there to help you get your needs met at the front desk. That's technology, radio techs to make sure our equipment is working, our property and evidence to get you that evidence or process scenes. And we are continuing to build. So just for a quick snapshot, it right before July 1st of 2020, we had about 152 total employees within the police department. July 1st, 2020, we went down to 125, about an 18% reduction. So pretty significant. We're building back on that, and I'm really encouraged by not only the opportunity to do so, but the people that we're bringing in. That second bullet point you'll see there says leveraging new technology. You may or may not have read about our automated license plate reader ALPR technology in the paper last week. I would encourage you to keep an open mind on what you read, and we have a lot of information on our website that I would encourage you to go to. But we're finding that that is going to be we believe, a really good tool for the police department to not only thwart crime as it may be occurring, or also for follow-up leads. And as I go to these regional meetings with county chiefs that have this technology, I can tell you that at every meeting, there is success story after success story about the use of it. Um, I should also acknowledge that with every technology that the police department or government uses, there does need to be safeguards in place. We worked with city council twice, both at a study session and then an action item to what I believe set some really prudent, good safeguards in place about how we're using this technology, who we're sharing this technology, kind of the rules for when this technology can be used. And while nothing will satisfy everyone, I feel like we got some really good input and direction from council, and that we're meeting the needs of the community while utilizing a technology that I think is going to be really good for us. And then lastly, I've been in the business 26 years. I got in it to serve and protect. I will tell you, it's a pleasure, like I mentioned, to serve and protect this community by and large. When I go to these community meetings and town halls, while everyone not everyone loves the police, so to speak, but we get a lot of really good feedback about good interactions, and I'm really grateful for that. And I find that by and large, we hit the mark. Sometimes we don't. We want to know about that, but by and large, I can assure you that the women and men that are here, either wearing the uniform or working behind the scenes to help us make our mission, are here to serve and protect. And, we acknowledge that here in Palo Alto, there is a higher standard. There's an expectation of a higher standard of service. There's an expectation that we do more, that we're problem solvers, that we listen and seek to understand, and we're happy to do that. And I will tell you, having worked at another police department and experienced other police departments and how they work, our city is up for your police officers are up for it, and I'm really proud of that. Next slide, please. All right. As I previewed, and I'm just moving my video screen so I can kind of read. So as I previewed, the police department has a website. You'll see it there. And I will call it a treasure trove of information. Pretty much everything that you want to know and see about the police department is there. And I've got a couple bullet points that I want to just highlight and kind of drill down on so you know what they are. But just know, if there's something that you want to go back and learn about the police department, it's almost likely going to be on this police department. And one of the things that, when I was confirmed by council last fall in August, I wanted to make sure that we were being as transparent or giving as much visibility as to what we do, and that we are communicating those things. And so I am a huge believer in communicating and giving as much information as we can to our public, and then let you make your own decisions based on the information that you're reading, the interactions that you're having, what you're hearing from me and what you're hearing from others about your police officers here in your police department. But getting back to this slide here, you'll see a little bullet point there that says report log. Well, what is a report log? Every report that is ever generated by the police department gets put on a log. And prior to some staffing shortages in our records, we used to put that out every business day. Right now, we do it once a week. So we mail that out to media. We post it and we mail it out to media. And that's where they get a lot of their information for their police blotter, I'll call it. It's an accounting of what we do. And so if you really want to drill down on what reports were taken, what's happening in our community here, I would encourage you to go take a look at that report log. I mentioned that we're doing it once a week. That's a staffing issue. I anticipate within the next month or so that we'll be back to doing that once every business day. It's one of the goals we've set for ourselves as we've rebuilt our staffing. The next bullet point you'll see there is news release. This is also something that our local media and others use to report on things happening within our community. So what might the police department do a news release on? It might be a major event. We may need the public's help with something. It might be a newsworthy item where we want the public to be aware of it. We release these proactively. Not every agency within Santa Clara County and the region does a news release, but again, in the under the spirit and the vision of making sure that we have this community informed as possible. We want you, if we think there's big news to share, we're going to put it out in that self-generated, self-initiated news release. One of the things that the next bullet point you'll see, and I'm really proud of this one, it's unique to Palo Alto, is when my predecessor Bob Johnson was here, there were some conversations happening about encryption and following what the police department was doing. And so because the city of Palo Alto is has so many talented people. Our internal IT team was able to put together this calls for service interactive map. So what does this thing do? Again, you can go to our website, you can click on it. Have you ever driven home from the grocery store or the coffee shop or late at night and seen a bunch of police cars in your neighborhood and wondered, what are the cops doing here? I know I have. It always piques my curiosity when I see a bunch of cop cars in my neighborhood. Now I have the chief's cell phone number of the city I live in, so I get to call him. But you guys probably aren't going to be calling me up. But there's. I want to assure you, you can still find out what's going on. And you can go to this calls for service map. And if we've been dispatched to a call for service, we track 24 hours worth of calls for service, and it dots down pretty close on a map for you, and you can find out what that type call was and how long we were there and some other stuff. And there is no other law enforcement agency or city in the region that I'm aware of that has such a cool map and interactive map. Because we do have crime here in the city, property crime being the most prevalent. Again, if you want to go to our website and get some crime prevention tips, you can do that. We'll talk about that in a couple more slides, but those are there for you. Here's another thing that I'm really proud of and that is unique to PA that I have not seen anywhere. So RIPA stands for Racial and Identity Profiling Act. Long story short is on anytime someone is detained or searched by a member of California law enforcement, we report that to the Department of Justice. And what we have done is we have created an interactive map of all our data from 2022 where you can go on there and you could spend hours on this thing. It's all the information in a downloadable format, and you can find out who the police department is stopping, who they're searching, why they're searching them, the reason for it, their race, their ethnicity, their gender, all that stuff is on there. And this is a really important, critical topic that I really don't have the time to spend on today, but I really encourage you, if this is something that you're interested in, to go to our website and look at it. But I will say this, for the first time ever, police chiefs across the state have more data at their fingerprint tips about how we are policing our communities than ever before. And as we know, with any data, lots of data, it usually brings up more questions. And I want to assure you that as the police chief, we're looking to answer those questions. And so if you've been following along over the last year or so with our race and equity updates and our work with policy and services and other subcommittees, we are in the process of working with a subject matter expert data analysis who their job is to analyze data and to tell the story of that. And if and when, as I expect, there are opportunities for us to better ourselves, better police this community, address issues happening, we're going to do that, and I can assure you for that. So take a look at that. Our policy manual, this came up in 2020. There was a time when this police department had a number of redacted policies. I can tell you now today, you can go on our police department webpage. There are no policies that are entirely redacted. So every policy is on there. We've surgically redacted tactical and officer safety components of our policy manual. So if you want to take a look at that. And then lastly, we have an independent police auditor, Office of Independent Review. They come twice a year in council. And if you want to look at their reports going back to 2006, you can. If you're not following us on social media, I really want to encourage you to do that. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X or whatever it is this day, I would love for you to do that. Um, it's not it's important for a lot of reasons, but here's one of the biggest. In a critical incident, in an earthquake, in a catastrophic incident, flooding, anything like that, you are going to get real-time updates from the police department as we have them. And that's really important because communication is key. And when you're making decisions in the interest of your family, your property, your possessions, those things, we want you to have the most updated information so that you're in best position to do that. And then lastly, one of the things I'm really excited about, back in the fall of 2021, we were fortunate enough to be selected by Santa Clara County Behavioral Health Services to take part in a pilot program called PERT, which is Psychiatric Emergency Response Team. That is where we pair a behavioral health clinician with a police officer. And that police officer isn't wearing the uniform like I am. They're dressed down in what we call plain clothes. And it's a co-response model where we have that behavioral health clinician to address that acute, that emergent um, person in mental health crisis in Palo Alto before we send those uniformed cops when that's available. Unfortunately, we lost our clinician from Santa Clara County. She decided to go back home. She got homesick. And so that was a big loss for us. But I will tell you, once again, council was great this year, and I was able to get the authorization to hire two PERT clinicians for this city. And I aspire, and what will happen one day once we can get them hired is we have a 7 day a week coverage of that PERT team, and even some potential overlap, because when we only had one, we could only have them here 4 days a week, certain hours. It's a challenge to hire PERT clinicians. I will tell you, not all of them want to ride around with the cops, work nights and weekends, and go to people in emergent, that are dangerous, potentially dangerous in emergent health crisis. So it takes a really special clinician, a real guardian angel and mental health clinician to do that. They're out there, so just getting them on board is going to be a challenge for us. But we've got the positions in place, and the plan is to get them as soon as we can. Next slide, please. I won't spend too much time on this. Just to say that, when we had those conversations on those necessary and really critical and important conversations on police reform, again, nationally, locally, throughout the state, there was that question about defund. Do we defund the police departments? And, some cities chose to take I'll call it overt acts to do that. I can tell you in Palo Alto, the city council never defunded the police department ever. And, I was fortunate and privileged to be part of a number of ad hoc conversations with council members over the summer. And never once did anybody suggest that we should defund our police department. With that said, we knew that there were changes that we needed to make within the police department, and we worked with our POA and we worked with council and the community, to redo our force policy, to expand the scope of the IPA, and a lot of other really good things we put in place. But that was never under the umbrella of defunding the police department. I will say though, what coincided with this horrific murder of George Floyd was had been preceded by COVID. And, the city gets a lot of money from our sales tax and our TOT tax. And when the world shut down in early 2020, that source of funding dried up. And the police department, along with all other city departments, was forced to reduce. And for the police department, the majority of our budget, if you ever can't sleep at night and you want to dive into our budget, you'll see that it's built very largely of pay and benefits. Public safety is a very costly thing for a city, and so we had to cut personnel, and that was at 18% that I had spoke about earlier. So the police department was reduced back in FY21, which started on July 1st, 2020, but that wasn't because of a defund movement. And I think that's a very important nuance to make. But like I said, in the fall of 2021, with that council's support and direction, we started to build back, and we're still doing that. In this budget that just started this year, I added 2 traffic officers. Why did I do that? Well, I can tell you that after having attended a multitude of community events and public events and gatherings, and getting people to, just share with me, their thoughts. Traffic is a really big issue and concern. And having been here since 2015, I know that uh, the ability to bike and to walk is a critical component of life in Palo Alto. And our community takes those things very serious. And you can't have cars speeding, through neighborhoods and through our main arteries and thoroughfares, because speeding cars create accidents, and we want to minimize that. And so I listened to our community and the feedback that I got, and I knew that because if you weren't aware, we had to disband the traffic unit along with a lot of other units back in 2020. And so we're bringing that back. You may or may not have actually seen a police motorcycle riding around town already. That started back in January. What I did is I wouldn't call it an extra sergeant, but I reallocated a sergeant, which is a first line supervisor, and I put him on the motorcycle to start getting our community familiar with seeing a cop riding around on a motorcycle again, in the hopes that I could add 2 more officers to his team with this budget. And it looks like it's happening. As soon as I can get enough officers in the door, we'll be filling that. I will tell you though, when I have to consider allocating resources for the police department, where do I put the bodies? The number one thing is when someone calls 911 and needs a police officer to show up to their house, that's most important. And so I need to ensure that our patrol staffing, our 24/7, 365 staffing is sufficient to meet our community's needs for when they pick up that phone and they need a cop there. And so the other stuff like traffic, it's great to have, but that doesn't come in place of making sure that you have a cop when you need one, and need to call 911. Next slide, please. All right. So how can I find out what the Palo Alto Police Department is up to? Well, I've kind of prefaced that or previewed that a little bit, but I really believe that there are 4 ways if you want to know what your police department is up to. The first is the social media, and if you remember, you can just go to our website and you can hit any of those social media. You can sign up for any of those social media that suits your fancy, and we will get you our real-time updates from there. The second, as I previously mentioned, is our press log and our press release. There's probably a strong likelihood when we put out one of the press release, at least, that you're going to read about it in the local media. But if you want to find out before it's in print or on the computer, please go and check that out. The third one is that calls for service interactive map. Again, that's 24 hours of any time our officers were dispatched to a call for service anywhere in the city. Lots of different inputs you can give. You can find out what's happening there. And then the fourth, which I'm most proud of, is last fall, coinciding with my confirmation by chief, the police department made the determination to unencrypt our police radio. And I will tell you that today, as I stand here before you, we are the only agency in Santa Clara County that has an unencrypted radio. And you can go on and you can download an app onto your phone and you can listen to what the police department is doing 24/7, 365. And I think that's really important to point out for a number of reasons. But a few that come to mind is I want the public and the community feel informed. As a police department, we're not perfect, but we have nothing to hide. And if you want to know what your police department is up to and listen along, you can do that. I will tell you that, especially with the storms over the new year, this last transition from December to January, I had community members and members of the public reaching out to me and tell me how grateful they were that at late at night they could listen to the police scanner and they can find out what was happening with the creek floodings and some of the storm stuff. And for me, my vision as a police off the chief is to, I want our community to feel like they're part of the public safety and police solution, that they're contributing to public safety here, and being able to listen to what your police department is doing, I think is a critical component of that. And that's why we do it. And I'm really proud of that. All right, eyes and ears. You know, uh, if I was to ask you how many police officers are out there right now, what is our minimum staffing for, a daytime population of maybe 80 to 100,000, depending, or a nighttime bedded down population of 65,000? How many cops driving the black and white do you think are out there right now? And when I ask this question, I know y'all can't respond. So, but I'll tell you, when I ask this question at community meetings, I get members, audience members will raise their hand and they'll say 20, 25, they'll say 15. And I always tell them, you gotta talk to the mayor, talk to my boss. I like these numbers, because the reality is, the answer is, our minimum staffing requires six. And people are really blown away by that. I can assure you that as the police chief, that it's enough, that we have supervisors and other ancillary officers out there, but it's six that are assigned to patrol the city, so to speak, and we are able to do that. But what that means is we can't be everywhere at once. I gotta think that most of you on this call said, "Man, where's a cop when you need one? When you're seeing someone behaving badly or cut you off or do something crazy, where is a cop when you need one?" And the reality is we can't be everywhere at once, because we have a lot of responsibility here. And so we do, as a police chief, I do want you to be our eyes and ears out there. And so what does that mean? Again, I will not advocate. I do not want you to try to stop crime happening again. Remember, it's people are more important than property. But if you see suspicious um, activity or behavior that is related to crime, I want you to call us. Now, let me repeat that: suspicious activity or behavior that is related to crime. And the reason I say that is, um, we are not going to send a police officer out to your neighborhood if you call us up and say there's a suspicious person in my neighborhood. I've been accused of being suspicious for whatever reason. If people don't recognize me, whatever. We do not respond to, we do not, we're law enforcement. And so when we respond to things, it has to have a criminal component. And so there will be times when people will call our dispatch and say, "I see a suspicious person of a certain race or ethnicity in my neighborhood, and I want you to send the cops out." We're not going to do it. We're going to dispatchers trained and will prompt, well, what is that person engaging in? What is that activity? What is that activity that's related to crime for why you need the police to come out? And I think that's a really important distinction, and one that's critical to us, that we're going to respond when that activity is related to crime. And so what might that look like? Well, maybe you see someone walking down the street and they're checking the doors on parked cars. Maybe they go to your neighbor's house and you don't recognize them, and they're trying the door handle. Maybe they're peeking over your neighbor's fence, or maybe they're trying the gate handle on your neighbor's fence, trying to get in the back. Or maybe, believe it or not, this happens not unfrequently. You see someone in your neighbor's backyard that you don't recognize, or you see someone in your backyard that you don't recognize. That is activity and behavior that's suspicious and related to crime. So that's when that's when I want you to call us. And when all else fails, if you feel like it's an emergency, not emergency, which one is it? Just call 911. Keep it easy. We'll triage it for you. And so I encourage you to do that. And I know I'm getting up on time, so I'm going to just speed through these last couple here. And then do your part to deter crime. If I could just get people to lock their car doors and stop leaving a spare set of keys in their cars and unlock cars, I could probably solve half the stolen cars here. Um, there's a rule in my family that whenever we drive somewhere, especially on vacation or on a trip, we don't leave anything visible on the inside of the car. Don't leave that backpack. Our criminals they're opportunists, and so when they're looking around, they want to be in and out. An auto burglary can literally happen in less than 5 seconds. Watch it. It's actually disturbing if you watch one go down on a video. Don't give them that opportunity. Make them want to pass your car up because they don't see anything worth breaking into for that. keep your windows locked. Um, keep your garage down, keep your front door locked, keep your back sliders locked. Those are some of the things that you can do to defer crime. Next slide. I will say that this just as a big overview, I think my favorite part about being chief is engaging with the community. And what you see here is all ways that we do that. Breaking with the law is Palo Alto's version of coffee with a cop. 3 or 4 times this year already, and one more time in the fall at least. We go to a local coffee shop and we spend 3 hours there just hanging out. And people want to come talk to me. They want to come talk to records. They want to just have a one-on-one personal interaction with a member of the police department. We're there. National Night Out. We just had one at the police department sponsored one at Bull Park and Johnson Park this year, a couple weeks ago, in the first Tuesday of August. They were very well attended. If you went to the one at Johnson Park in the north end of town, there was a local band. I believe it was a Pali band, and they were just fantastic. And we were rocking out on this jazz band on the lawn. It was awesome. And so these are all ways that you can connect with us and that you can get to know us and that we want to get to know you. You go on our social media and you post something on our Twitter or one of our pages, we're gonna get back to you. We're gonna do our best to answer your question or address your issue on that. Next slide. If you haven't seen it already, we have a brand new building being built. It's probably 90% done. That's the conceptual art. That's not the real one that you're seeing there. It's being spearheaded by Public Works. It's a massive building. It's amazing. It's seismically safe. Why is that important? Because in an earthquake, it's going to stand up, and you want your public safety to be there in an earthquake or a flood or a major disaster, because we're your 24/7, 365 service workers, and we're going to be there for you. And so I can assure you that it is a building that's worthy of your public safety. We'll be sharing it with Fire Admin and Office of Emergency Services. If you know Ken Duker and his team, Chief Blackshire and his admin team, it's going to be centrally located for us. One of the great parts, we're going to have a giant, beautiful community meeting. We're happy to host the league at some point. If you'd like to come back and do something again, we'd love to have you in there. And so stay tuned for that. I'm told it'll be done by the end of this year and move in. The police department will probably start moving in early next year. So if you've ever toured the current police building, if you've toured it in the winter, in the rain, you've probably seen 5-gallon buckets collecting rain in our briefing room. And so we're looking forward to moving out of this building and letting the city do what they want with it. Next slide, please. All right. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, the Palo Alto Police Foundation. And it's a grassroots effort. It's Palo Alto residents. It's people who care about, the board is made up of people who are passionate, not only about this community, but about this police department, and bringing them together and just strengthening our bond. And, not to go too much into it, but the last couple of years especially have been really hard on our police officers and our police department, and our men and women who serve. They need the public to feel the public support. And so when we talk about service and advocacy and recognize and engagement, it's not only in the community, but that happens inside the building, and that means a lot. That's part of that retention component when I talked about keeping people in the building here, feeling engaged, feeling and supported, feeling valued by our community. That's what this foundation is doing. They're independent of the police department. They're a 501(c)(3). They don't answer to me. I don't have any, we work together, but they're their own separate entity. I would encourage you to go check them out. And if that's something you want to get involved in, I think it's a very worthy cause. All right, Judy. I know I maybe went a little long for Q&A, but I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you for that
Thank
time.
you. Well, that was incredibly comprehensive, and we appreciate the depth of information that you provided to us. Let's do a little bit of a lightning round, Police Chief, if you could. See if we can get some of these answered in the next few minutes. You did say that the most common crime was property crime. What would you say about other kinds of crimes like drug problems, fentanyl, you mentioned mental health clinicians? how much of that occupies our police time?
Yeah, and I want to separate the two because they're two separate entities, mental health and then there's drug use. Sometimes they cross over, sometimes they're separate. So, mental health, we do see a lot of mental health response in this community. And we know we've had our tragedies on the tracks. That's something that's always on my mind, as a police chief and public safety. And so we spend a lot of time addressing that, both acute and emergent, meaning in the moment someone calls 911 and needs that PERT team or a cop, but also on the back end, following up, working with other entities within the county services that aren't law enforcement that are much better at handling these things. So doing stuff on the back end to connect these families, because in a perfect world, you have either little or no law enforcement intervention in a mental health crisis. Because I did my capstone project on mental health co-response, and law enforcement can sometimes exasperate mental health, but at 2 in the morning, the cops are the only one you're going to get. So we deal a lot with that. Let me talk about fentanyl and drug use. We do have that here. Unfortunately, our officers are finding fentanyl out in our street. Fentanyl can be transdermal, meaning that if you touch it, it can expose you. One of the reasons that the fentanyl uh, is such a problem in our society is that you can buy a pill for $5, and that pill could kill you. And once you're hooked on that, it's really, really, really strong narcotic. And so we are seeing that. I would say that we don't spend a ton of time on that, but that fentanyl is here, and so I'd be really, really careful. Our officers all carry the Narcan. And so if someone has overdosed on fentanyl, we can give them the Narcan, which is blocks the opioid to bring them back, so to speak.
Just a very quick, hopefully one sentence answer. Do you do any of this kind of training in our schools so that the kids who think they're, immortal
I
might be
believe the school
warned?
takes that on themselves.
Okay. Okay. Um, Talking about the RIPA report, can you just, has there been a final report? And when there is one, when can we see what's in it?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is no, there is no final report because we are working with that third party data analyst. When that is done, that will be a public document. We'll post that on our RIPA site, and we'll have discussions from there. And so we're going to keep the
Okay.
community informed about what we're doing.
Okay. License plate readers. I think we're all very interested to know whether, you are going to know that we parked in front of Coupa Cafe for 3 hours, and what are you going to do with that data?
Yeah, so yeah, it's a good question. This was brought up. The answer is the license plate reader may catch you, but the cops will probably never know about it because we only get notified if it's like a stolen plate or it's wanted in connection with a crime. And we place safeguards in as part of our policy that the officers are now allowed to go in there on a data digging expedition. That's not what the system's intended for. We have checks and balances for that. And so there shouldn't be an officer that goes in there to see who's parking at Coupa for 3 hours. That's against our policy.
So it's not for parking tickets.
No, but I will say that the city does, through the Office of Parking, Philip Cami, does have parking enforcement that has license plate readers that is not governed or managed by the police department. I don't
Okay.
know what they do with that.
I guess we'll
Fair
find out.
enough.
Um, uh, Another question, and I think it was seriously asked, would it be smarter to reduce our police department and partner with other neighboring police departments for more efficiency and coverage?
I think that was brought up. I would say no for a couple reasons. Number one is most agencies in this area are short themselves, so I'm not sure you're solving the problems. The second reason is that Palo Alto is a unique community, just like the needs of Mountain View, the needs of Sunnyvale, the needs of San Jose, the needs of Gilroy. And, we want officers that are unique and special and willing to serve in Palo Alto and Palo Alto's needs. And I think when you start crossing jurisdictional boundaries, you lose some of that specialness of ownership of community, um, police operations and policy is specific to the community. So I wouldn't be supportive of that for those reasons.
Okay, so another question came up again about drugs. I think, we all read the headlines and we're all worried. Um, some of our park areas, like Lytton Plaza, have become a little bit unfortunately known for drug action, or the homeless are there, and maybe they're the same or maybe they're not. What are you doing you have not that many patrol officers out there, so what are you doing about that?
Great question. So council, one of the build backs they gave us was two officers specifically dedicated to what we call the special problems detail. And these are two officers whose sole job is to work on special problems occurring. One of the things they do is they work downtown and they're plain clothes. They have connections with our unhoused community. Believe it or not, most cops, just like a lot of our community, know our unhoused by either name, facial recognition, what they're up to. Cops have been here forever. And so we do keep an eye on those areas. They do work on those areas, and they address crime as it comes up, or as we get information. I will tell you, I got two emails this morning for issues related to parks and parking and that. And when those come in, we address those as well.
So speaking of parking, we have a lot of people that work in Palo Alto that can't afford to live in Palo Alto, as you started out your presentation. Some of them are living in vans along El Camino. I know that your predecessor tried to handle that very humanely. What is the current policy and a practice?
Yeah, great question. Let me first say that we have a blog that we put out probably a year or two ago that addresses it. It's very long and lengthy. It's very informative. So let me just plug that. But the city of Palo Alto has a 72-hour parking ordinance, and either via the hotline tip or proactive enforcement for community services officers or police officers, we do patrol those areas on a regular basis. El Camino Park, some other areas of town. We have there's a couple different options: tagging them, warning them, towing them. It's always a balance because it's not as easy as just towing someone's car and just, especially if they're living out of it. And so we try to take a compassionate approach, but we do tow. I will tell you, we do tow. So, people may be familiar with a rainbow school bus that was on El Camino a couple months ago. We put a lot of effort into getting that person hooked up with services and different homes, but ultimately we had to tow that vehicle. When it becomes a biohazard, when they're blocking our sidewalks and road, creating a traffic hazard, when they're stealing electricity or water from residences and commercials, that's a problem. And so we do address those. It's a balance. I'm not sure if we could appease everyone in the community, but we do try to address it as it comes in and proactively.
And finally, your predecessor was very fond of mindfulness. And I think those of us in a college town, well-educated people, think that's a fine thing. What's sort of what's your legacy going to be?
Yeah, it's a great
Hopefully.
question. And let me just plug Bob's mindfulness. If you had come into a police briefing 26 years ago when I was hired in 1997 and said, I want everyone to close your eyes and breathe for 10 minutes, you would have been laughed out of the room. But, Bob brought this mindfulness to better our police officers, and it's a wonderful thing. And I've been asked this before, and I have a weird take. Some may still call it a legacy. I want to leave the police department better than I found it, and I want to leave this community better than I found it. And I think it starts with a couple things. Number one, it starts with building that trust and respect with our public. And there are national and local headlines, some that Palo Alto have owned, that have really broken the trust of our police department with our community. I want to rebuild those. I want this community to trust the police department, and I want our officers to come to work. And we call it internal procedural justice. I want them to feel engaged, supported, communicated to, and valued. And then the goal is that they take that and they translate that into how they serve our community. It's a worthy
That's fabulous.
endeavor, but we're up for it.
Thank you. And thank you for being such a wonderful role model for your profession. There are an awful lot of people who slam police around the country, some of them very rarely, but probably deserve it. But we really appreciate what you're building in your police department for our community. So thank you so much for speaking with us today. And We wish you a great success in that legacy. I'm going to finish by just reminding those on with us, thank you for joining us. Um, there are a few events we want to let you know about just in the last minute here. The League of Women Voters is having a discussion on September 12th at someone's home about a film that having to do with reproductive rights and abortion. So look for that in the voter newsletter or the e-blasts. On October 1st, we're having our fall kickoff at the Foster Museum, which is just outstanding. So be looking for that too. We invite everybody, bring your friends, whether they're members or not. And October 19th, we're having a 7 p.m. virtual uh, meeting discussion about the city's effort to electrify and get rid of gas appliances. That's a hot topic, and I meant that the way it came out. And then finally, in December 6th, we're going to have a winter luncheon at which at Il Fornaio, and our guest speaker will be a very well-known political scientist and commentator, Larry Gersten. So we're really looking forward to that. So finally, let me come back to thanking Chief Binder for being with us today. We wish you tremendous success and thank you for your professionalism and your integrity. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody on.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.